was we went to a house fire, and the poor old lady, the house was really quite badly damaged. And we came across this thing, and we thought, what is that? And very evidently, it was
Welcome to another episode from the podcast series, Life Beyond the Pips, which is looking at public services and how we can support people in what they do, what impact it has on their lives, and also how we can help people towards retirement. But also, we're going to look at some funny incidents as well. I'm delighted that my first guest in this new series is a good friend of mine, Dean Dewey. Welcome, Dean.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Basically, what we're going to look at, Dean, if it's all right with you, is we're going to look at your service. We're going to look at the sort of things that you did, the impact it has on your personal life, why you did it, sort of thing, and also we look at some funny incidents. And I'm sure a man of your calibre will have funny incidents that you can come up with. So, but it's completely unscripted. Apart from the first question I've got from you. Who are you and where are you from?
Yes, well, my name is Dean Dewey. I'm originally born in Hampshire, down in Portsmouth, but I served all my time down in West Sussex within the fire service down there, living down right on the coast. But now I've now moved up to the north and live up in Cumbria.
Welcome to the north. What's the differences between the north and the south then? Is that divide, Dean?
There's plenty of differences, one of which people talk to you. But more importantly, I suppose we have a real feeling for being here. We've holidayed up here for years now, and it was always something we wanted to do. My mother was a Yorkshire lass as well, so obviously I have a slight sort of yearning to come back here. And so really that's what it was. And we've been up here for about 8 years now. So we live in a very small farming village. In an old cottage built in 1692 of all time. So I think...
Were you part of the building team then?
No, but the warranties ran out. I know that. So
on a serious note then, Dean, what was your motivation? Why did you join the fire service and not the premier service, the police service?
Yeah, I suppose the thing is that I grew up with my grandparents because my parents split when I was, 8 or 9, which was quite rare in those days in the 60s. So really I was sort of more influenced by my grandfather, and he was a part-time fireman for West Sussex. But prior to that, he was also in the AFS and the NFS, the Auxiliary and the National Fire Service. So served a lot of time in the Blitz in the war, told me lots of stories about wading through 3 feet of molten butter in various factories and all that sort of malarkey. And I've got a photograph here of him going way back in the day. So if I share this, this is him. And I think this thing was called a Dennis Cub. And when they had to ride up to London, they would have to sit outside, obviously. And then when they went through a town, they'd have to stand up and obviously be at attention. And then as soon as they went out rural again, they could all sit down. But my grandfather was this chap here. And you can see the good looks finished with him in the family line. But
very much so, yeah. That's apparent.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But he had this habit. He was a character, and he liked to wind people up. So he always wore his hat at this sort of jaunty angle, which used to annoy the living daylights out of everybody. So he did that forever, and no matter what, and he didn't really care. But yeah, so he was probably my influence. I first became a TV engineer when I left school. Because I had this big thing about electronics and stuff like that. But after three or so years, I thought, no, I've had enough of this. And then at the tender age of 21, I joined the West Sussex Fire Service. And I went to Reigate training school to be then a recruit, of which I'll show you. This will frighten you to death. So that was us on our recruits course. And this little chap here was me. And underneath that hat, actually, his hair as well, which you'll be surprised to hear. So that was Recruits Course 146 back in 1982. So So that's really where it all began, Dave. And then I served 30 years and 1 month within the service, in the secondary
Right.
service, not the primary one, obviously.
Obviously, obviously. So, with what sort of positions did you hold? I mean, I know a little bit about the sort of rank structure within there. What did you look for any progression? Was there any specialist posts that you had during your time?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's an interesting career path. As I say, joined in '82, and I sort of got through probation. We did a 2-year probation period, which I managed to get through with all the various exams we did. And then in those days, you sat promotional exams for a leading fireman and then sub officer. So I got those out the way fairly quickly. And you had a theoretical and a practical element to those. And then basically job interviews came up, and on the second one, I picked up a leading fireman's role, and I went from Hawley, which was the Gatwick station, then down to the middle of the county, a place called Horsham, which was B Division headquarters. And that was my first posting as a leading fireman. I was still living down on the coast, bear in mind, as well. Had a young family, wife plus one son. And then after about 2 years, I got the opportunity to go to Chichester, which is where the brigade headquarters is. And that was literally for 7 miles door to door from my place. So I used to cycle into work then quite happily. And I spent quite a time there. And I think because of the nature of bringing up a young family, wife having to stay at home for the duration while the youngster was growing up, that's where I stayed. So I did about 8 years at Chichester. Then a chance to move down to Bognor, which is literally a mile away from home, then arose. So I went there and I spent 10 years there. There was that situation. I suppose I was then getting, I received my long service medal at the prestigious Arundel Castle, which was a monumental event. Fantastic. It really was. Very, very sort of a lot of pomp and ceremony went with it. But I was into them a sort of the latter third of my career, and I sat in the locker room one day, and there was an old phrase that someone told me about the only difference between a groove and a grave is in the spelling. And I suddenly thought, I've got two choices here. I can grind out these last few years, or I can do something about it. Now, at that time, I was heavily involved. I played a lot of rugby in my time at a reasonable level, then got into coaching, and I was then in the rugby union's coach development staff. So I was coaching coaches, as it were, and then I coached coaches to coach coaches. So you went up through that level, and they had they had a huge shakeup of their education process, and it was very much centered around the person, i.e., the player in this case. And it was all of your feedback was done through questioning. So why did you do that? What did you see to make you do that? What was in your mind at that time? And trying to sort of do this guided exploration into, was that a good idea or not? And I then went into training and got what was then a watch manager's role, which was the old star sub officer.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent about 3 years in training. And at that time, I then came across by a gentleman who obviously is a familiar friend to both of us, by the name of Peter Stanley.
Yes.
And he was running his training company dealing in instant command. And we were very much lacking as a brigade in the delivery of this sort of style of obviously training. And myself and a good pal of mine in training, a guy called Pete Sadler, who's still in the service now, we put together our own instant command package. And I started to shadow a lot of what Peter did as well. And after that period, we really started to develop this style of training that we managed to put out to the brigade, and it was very successful. And then the opportunity to move up into what was then known as the assessment development centers. And that took me into the field of middle sort of senior management. And I had a go at that, passed it by some great miracle. And I suppose for the first time in my life, I won't say headhunted, probably decapitated it a few times, but chap I know, he was a divisional commander at Crawley, said, look, I hear you're in the running. I would really seriously like to see an application from you. And basically, I got the job. I became a deputy divisional commander, and I looked after the Crawley district, then went down to Mid Sussex, then went down to Arran, and that was the end of my career, basically. in that period, then I then met up with Peter and
Yeah.
had a chat with him, and I then started doing a little bit of work with him, and then for the last 15 years, as with yourself now, I've been a
Yeah.
part of that environment. So that's really
Yeah.
my whole career
Yeah.
path as it's gone through.
That's pretty good. So, you've certainly looked at the promotion processes and you've gone through them and you achieved them. So the police service and the fire service, they are very similar. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about it, despite, we're the premier service and always have been, always will be. However, what impact, what did you know about the fire service, and what impact has it had on your family life during your service?
It's been huge, I suppose, and, there's a lot of sacrifices have to be made from your family, and funny, I was talking to my wife downstairs about an hour ago, and I was explaining what I'm doing, and she says, "Oh, well, from a wife's point of view, any advice to someone who is a part of a family that has a fireman or firefighter, sorry, in the family, do not buy complicated toys for Christmas, because if they're not there, then you've got a
Yeah,
nightmare trying to put together that Lego set or Meccano or what." And I think she was deadly
yeah,
serious about that.
yeah.
As I would
Very good.
disappear out the house on Christmas morning at about 7 o'clock, saying, "Right, have a nice day, dear." And there's this
Yeah.
pile of presents of which, what the hell do I do with that?
Yeah,
So
very
yeah,
much
it
so.
had a big impact, and, for 2 days and 2 nights, you're away doing whatever you do, and then when I went into the district management, I was on call, so I was a 24-hour, sort of, what they call flexi duty,
Mhm.
and for that period, I had to camp out in Crawley because you had to be within the district that you were managing, and that was a bit of a culture shock to have to go back into that sort of regime again.
Yeah.
Because within training,
Mhm.
there wasn't a shift. Well, there was, but you didn't have to do nights. It was all day shifts, so that had an impact. But I think one of the things that I often think about, and going back to the rugby side of it, is that focus on how to deliver training and to really engage with the audience that you're dealing with. If it hadn't have been for that, I don't think I'd be where I am now. And the two merge beautifully together to allow me to then have the confidence to have a
Mhm.
style of my own. And I think it's important that you do that because you don't want to go through teaching by numbers and the robotic approach. And I think bringing in
Yeah.
a bit of personality, character, humor, walking around the room as well, and generally engaging was something that really sort of that got me to where I am. And,
Mhm.
I think it was an important part of my development, to be fair.
Mhm. Just to just something that you said there about bringing in your sort of personality and your humor. Have you got rid of it now? Have you lost it altogether, or?
Well, you can answer that surely.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
I was trying to be
it
nice.
it's
On a serious note, what support was there from the start of your career, and how different was it towards the end
oh, wow.
for people in relation to well-being? What was there an acknowledgement that there needed to be that well-being support?
There was 0. Let's be brutally honest. When I joined in '82, it was man up and grow a pair. Um, Personal
Yeah,
PPE, personal protective equipment was well, if you wanna wear it, wear it. We didn't have gloves. Um,
yeah,
BA was an optional extra breathing apparatus, and, I was at the sort of tail end of the smoke eaters sort of regime where just get in there, get a lungful, you'll be fine, son. And then gradually we had these gardening gloves appear out of nowhere where you could wear them if you want. And then a good pal of mine got caught in a flashover, lost all the skin off of his hands. And they started to
wow,
take it slightly more seriously. And the whole concept of PPE, and you'll know this from your profession, started to take on a whole new meaning. The poor guys down at Blaina in the South Wales who were killed had the old plastic leggings, which basically welded onto
mhm,
them without going into too much detail. And it was started the technology in clothing started to really take hold. So that was an important part. I mean, interesting thing here, this was my old helmet.
oh,
So
yes,
and you can
yeah,
see at one point I was a sub officer, but not for long.
yeah, Uh,
And in these days, you used to paint your helmet. This is old electrical tape. So if you got promoted, you put your tape on
yeah,
there.
yeah.
An old cork thing. I'd like to say this was my first one, but it wasn't. I'm afraid my first one got run over in the drill yard by a Land Rover and was flattened into a pancake. But
I
so
don't know if it's the way. I don't know if it's the way you're holding it to the camera, but that looks absolutely massive.
um, well, here we go.
I'm right. It is massive. It
Yeah,
is.
it looks
Very
quite
good.
small on my
Yeah.
head though. So
But
there
but
so
but for somebody like me though, sorry, Dean, for somebody like me, that is my first image of a fire officer, a
yeah,
fire, somebody that would turn up and deal with incidents. It was the big yellow helmet, similar
yeah,
to what the police with their old style custodian helmets, and now it's baseball caps. It's slightly different things,
yeah.
and I suppose it's called progress. But that is my first memory of the fire service, or
Oh
it would
yeah.
be the fire brigade, as it was called in them days, would be the big yellow hats.
Yeah, and from my point of view, Jack Warner is that archetypal police sort of image,
Eh,
isn't it?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we
yeah.
then
Who's
moved
Jack
into
Warner?
these.
Who's
The
Jack Warner?
He was a football referee, I think. But then we
Right.
then moved
Okay.
into this era with
Yeah.
with the visor and all the rest of it.
Yes.
And then
Yeah. Yeah.
the last one, well, this is my training one. It's got a bit burnt and a bit because I was
Yeah.
a fire behaviour instructor. So we went into
Yeah.
these things made by Cromwell or Galley,
Yeah.
actually. No, not Cromwell. And it had all sorts of stuff and technology, and
Yeah.
so you can see where we
Wow.
were going. So
Yeah.
in terms
Yeah.
of the PPE, magnificent. And being a fire instructor, we were put into 600-700 degrees, and yeah, you got a bead on, but you could survive in there quite happily. But I
Hmm.
think the one thing you touched on there is the welfare side of things, and
Yeah.
there was a realization of some good pals of mine who basically seen enough, without going into detail, just basically had to retire and had to leave because it had got too
Hmm.
much. So we
Yes.
brought in a process which was called the trauma aftercare team, and they were specially trained. They were still service personnel, but they weren't necessarily uniformed. So you'd have lasses from headquarters or from divisional or some of the fire prevention or fire safety people, and they would be specially trained to come out and just deal with. I don't know. It was making you aware of what you're likely to feel if you've seen something that was perhaps traumatic. And
Mhm.
that side of things started to really take off. And towards the end of my career, I was very mindful of youngsters that may have been subjected to things they hadn't seen before. And it was taken very seriously. And I think it's vitally important because, as I say, having thought of those fellas that are no longer in the service because of what they saw, could they have been helped? And could they have been assisted and perhaps supported through
Mhm.
that? So the whole thing is really, in my 30 years, I saw a massive, massive transition. Perhaps nowadays they don't quite see it. And I suppose the technology from like what we're using now,
Yeah.
AI, etc., that's where their sort of focus is, I think. And it's probably
Yeah.
taken for granted now that they'll be looked after in the other facilities that we've just
Mhm.
talked about.
I suppose it's difficult to compare what you've got now if you don't know any different. What you're comparing it with.
Yeah.
But like you say, I remember going to an incident when I was on a traffic attachment. I was only with them for a couple of weeks, and it was a multiple fatal, body parts all over the place. And my
Mhm.
welfare support afterwards was, "Are you all right? Right, go on then, get the car back out. Okay, thanks, bye."
Yeah.
And like you said, that's exactly what the attitude was. So when you decided that you were going towards your retirement, Dean, what impact did that have on you? How were you feeling about that?
You were sort of in this quandary, I suppose, as to shall I carry on? I was 51 when I retired, so I had a few good years left of me to go. But then there is a part of me saying there is always life outside, and there is another chapter to open. And in that period, I'd become I started to get more involved with rugby. I started coaching and teaching in a very, very exclusive private school called Christ Hospital. You may have heard of it. It's the old Blue Coat School. And then I was employed as an academy manager with a semi-professional club. So I had this idea of things I was going to do in the future, and this new page that I was going to turn, all armed with the skill set that I had before, which were quite transferable as well as far as I could see. I was also starting with the Peter Stanley organization as well, and I was the first person Peter took on. So there was only me plus him and Alex Dunnett, who were the three of us delivering. So that was allowing me to use my skill sets and not sort of letting them just sort of go off to pasture. So I think it was important that I did make that jump. I know a lot of people, and there's people that are still there now that I can remember from years and years ago, doing 40, 50 years, which is fine, and if that's your sort of idea of what helps you through things and what you enjoy doing. But I always say it's got to come to an end sometime. So do it on your terms, be in control of the situation, and have the plan B, and then move on. And there's a lot more out there to enjoy and experience. And that was my sort of mindset, really.
Yeah, which is a pretty good mindset, but acknowledging that you'd sort of acquired skills and they were transferable during the time, So with your retirement, then it's you've still retained that sort of link with the fire service, haven't you? In the training that you're doing at the moment, which is really good training, because we're both part of it. So from that point of view, that's pretty good. Did you not feel institutionalized in any way, Dean?
Partly, and I think you may well felt the same. There's this almost this fear of cutting the tie, because you think, oh no, what am I going to do next? But I was confident that there was a life out there, and I think I had to do it. Things change, and they're not necessarily changes that we all like to accept, but they have to change. That's life. But I've gone through the whole of my career just wanting to make a little bit of a difference, whether it be to me or somebody else. My coaching career, I've been very lucky with rugby. I've dealt with guys now that have played for England, played for the British Lions, and I was a part of that journey. And I just want to see people develop. And then coming back into the Pete Stanley thing, we were down in Reading beginning of the year, and saw this group of brand new level twos. Who were just like sponges, and we thought, great, this is what it's all about. And we said, we're going to give you something we didn't have, and we're going to get you going on that route and offer you that support to give you a little bit of a background, a little bit of an awareness of where this is going to go, and then that's the enjoyment of it.
The big question for me then, for you, Dean, is would you do it again?
Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but yes, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't. And as I said before, where I had the grandfather, obviously, scenario there, and I know he was absolutely delighted when I turned up the first day in the uniform, and it really sort of, I don't think it brought a tear to his eye. He wasn't that sort of bloke, but he just wanted to see me put my hat on at an angle. So
he just wanted to see you getting told off by one of the instructors. That's what he wanted.
Absolutely, yeah. And that happened a few times.
If you could give one piece of advice to people that are approaching retirement, what would that piece of advice be, Dean?
Oh Lord, plan ahead, because that day does come, and when you start planning, it's up to you. But don't ignore it. Don't let it catch up on you, and suddenly the day after tomorrow you're leaving, and you thought, oh bugger, I haven't done anything about this. So if you can't let go, it's to talk to people and talk to others that have made that jump and that sort of leap into the unknown, and get their feelings and their understanding of it, because it is vital. It will come to an end one day, and you have to do that.
And that's one of hopefully one of the purposes and one of the objectives that I'm hoping to achieve by doing this series of podcasts. I will not let you go without, a man of your caliber, you must have some funny stories, some incidents that you can recount with us without naming anybody, completely sanitized. The floor's yours, Dean.
The names would be changed to protect the innocent, so don't worry. Yeah. Oh, there's a few. We had an interesting story at Morton in the Marsh, which is the fire service training centre for national,
Yep.
where we everybody dressed in underwear for a debrief, which was interesting, and it's gone down in history. I've got a photograph of it. I'm not going to show it to you though, because
No.
it's before the watershed, so 9 p.m. is nowhere near yet. So there is that. I suppose the one thing I do remember, and I've often told this before, is we went to a house fire, and the poor old lady, she was okay, but obviously distraught because the house was really quite badly damaged, and we were doing the damping down, turning over, as we used to call it, making sure there's no hot spots. We came across this thing, and we thought, what is that? And very evidently, it was a dog, about the size of a terrier or whatever. And we thought, oh, poor lad. And it was clearly, it was no longer alive. And recognition of life extinct, we were allowed to do then. So oh, we can't let the poor lass see this dog. So we managed to sort of smuggle it out and popped it into the pump bay, which is the back end of the fire engine, pulled the locker down, and we thought, we could make up the story that we didn't see it or whatever, and the dog ran away and never came back. So she's got this memory. Anyway, someone spotted us and told the lady that we'd actually found this dog, and we got a phone call at the station. So, did you get my dog? And we said, well, yes, I'm afraid we did, but sadly it didn't survive. She said, oh, could I please have it back so I can bury it in my garden? And we thought, oh my God, well, okay, fine, yes. So we left it at that. And we had this dog. Rigor mortis had clearly set in. It was covered in soot, and it was just a mess. And we thought, we can't give this dog back to the lady. So we had a thing called a GD room, general duties room, which had a big sink and all the rest of it. So we're in there scrubbing this dog with Persil and fairy liquid and giving it a clean and a scrub up. Turns out it was a white Yorkie Scotty dog type thing. It'd come up absolutely pristine, but this image of us giving a shampoo and set to a dead dog was quite phenomenal. And we took it back to the woman, and she said, I've never seen it that clean before. We thought, oh my God, we're thinking she probably won't think it's the right dog, but that was one of the stories that I can just about relay on TV, I think. So
Brilliant.
But yeah, it was a very sad moment. But we this image of the three of us in this room giving this thing a scrub, and all of a sudden it changed color in front of our eyes.
God,
which was scary.
Dean, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on board. I hope that we can speak again in the future and do another episode. But if share it with your friends, and if there's any burning questions that they want to ask or anything like that, let's get back online. But thank you very, very much for your time. It very much appreciated, and looking forward to doing some more work with you with Peter Stanley Training.
Absolutely, no problem. You're very, very welcome, David. And as I say, you take care, and we'll speak again soon.
Thank you very much, Dean. Pleasure.
No, cheers, mate.